We are all very proud Indians today, and we've just witnessed the launch of the Chandrayaan-3. So after that spectacular launch, we have the second launch of this book, which is one of its kind, that captures within its pages Afghanistan, a once prosperous, beautiful country now ravaged by war. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all. We are honored to have amidst us some extraordinary luminaries from the world of politics, media, and education. I, Archana Dalmia, SAS Woman of Delhi, on behalf of the Foundation, am delighted to announce the launch of the book, Afghanistan, The Quest of Peace, The Path of Wars, by Prem Prakash ji, one of our favorites. I would also like to welcome our esteemed panelist, Mr. Pavan Verma, Ms. Ina Puri, SAS Woman of Gurugram, who will be moderating us for the evening. Before we begin the event, let me take a few moments to introduce to you the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a Kolkata-based non-profit trust which was established in the 1980s by the late Dr. Prabha Khaitan, an eminent literature enthusiast, a cultural activist, and a staunch feminist. The foundation has established a strong foothold in the world of literature, art, and culture, and was inspired by the cherished vision of the late Dr. Prabha Khaitan and her philosophy, Karm Hi Jeevan Hai. The foundation works relentlessly to create a cultural capital through its activities that propagate the literary and cultural assets of our country. May I now request Mr. Prem Prakash, Mr. Pavan Verma, and Ms. Ina Puri to come up on the stage. Can I also invite Anantmala Pottar, Karuna Goenka, my fellow SAS women of Delhi, to felicitate our guests on stage. The quest of peace, for peace, the path of wars. If you do it from the side, Can I now request Mr. Pavan Verma to come forward to launch the book, Afghanistan, The Quest of Peace, for Peace, The Path of Wars, and all others to join in the launch. Anandita? It's a proud privilege to be launching his new book, Afghanistan.
That is completely flooded. I would like to begin the evening, I think, by requesting Pavan Verma to say a few words about Premji here. Yes.
Let me begin by first saying how deeply honored I am to launch the book on Afghanistan by Prem Prakash ji. I want to thank also the ever-active Prabha Khaitan Foundation and the remarkable and dynamic women who run ESAS and arrange the literary activities of this organization, of which I have been a part more than once, not only in Delhi but outside. I wanted to begin by saying a few words, because in my view, this is not an ordinary launch. It's a tribute to a man who has become, in his own lifetime, an institution. I have known him for several decades now. As a diplomat, after having entered politics, and we have become friends in spite of the difference in age between us. But I can say that in many ways, in terms of reporting from the ground, with a combination of analysis, objectivity, detail, and acumen, he is a pioneer in journalism. I write a column, among my many columns, I write a weekly column for Hindustan Times. And a few months ago, I wrote about 5 iconic men. I promise you I will write about women also, who are above the age of 90 and have achieved so much in their life, of which we and they can be proud of. It's a column which is contrary to my normal writings, not political. It's a column called Just Like That. It appears on Sunday in Hindustan Times and also on their digital platform. And among the 5 people I chose, and the list is not complete, were in order of seniority Mr. M.K. Raskotra, who's now about to complete 100 years. I chose Mr. K.P. Singh, who's a good friend and chairman of DLF. I chose Dr. Karan Singh, who indeed deserves to be in this list. I chose Mr. Natwar Singh and, of course, Prem Prakash ji. And each of these 5 people have in their own fields, sometimes overlapping, started from small beginnings, except Dr. Karan Singh and Natwar Singh ji, and actually gone on to become iconic in their own lifetime. And Prem Prakash ji, from where he began, as a reporter, as a person who came a victim of partition, to build an institution like ANI, which, as you just said, is the largest news agency for television and among the top news agencies in the world. It is entirely the work of the vision, commitment, dedication, sacrifice, and एक हिंदी में शब्द है एकाग्रता of this one person. And so now, I don't want to say sunset, but in a period of his life when he is not required to work with the same zeal and fervor as he did when he was younger, it's also time to reflect on him as an individual and what his contribution is. We have traveled together many times as part of Prime Minister's delegations abroad. Of course, ANI was always a part of it. And I recall we were, I think, in either Samarkand or Bukhara once. I think the Prime Minister was VP Singh. And while the Prime Minister had gone for his meeting and was about to come back for us to fly off, everybody was doing their shopping. Prem Prakash ji came with what he considered a prized possession. It was a sarda, fruit that is found there, and which took him back to his childhood and to his memories. And I recall also, I'm just repeating this because an association is not one that is a professional interaction. An association is when you begin to know the person, get under his skin, and understand what are the attributes he or she have, which entitle recognition. I was to be press secretary to the President of India, to two presidents in fact, in Rashtrapati Bhavan in the early 90s. And one of them was President Venkatraman. Yes. And we were to make the first visit of a president to China. And President Venkatraman, ab Rashtrapati Mahamahim hote hain, he called me and he said, I don't want any media to go with me. I had been warned that he may have an aversion to the media by someone who had worked with him much longer, Gopal Gandhi. So I said, sir, if that's your instruction, I constrained to follow it, but please allow me the liberty to say that I don't agree with it. So there was a silence. And the president said, why don't you agree with it? And I said, because you consider this to be almost a kind of personal visit, which it is not. It is the visit of a head of state to another country for the first time, in which what happens there is a matter of interest for India as a whole. If we take no media with us at all, how will people follow what you have gone there for, what you have achieved, and assess what this particular step in diplomacy means? So there was another silence. I had a compromise in my head already. He said, what do you want? I said, sir, don't take a media party in the manner in which prime ministers used to travel at that time. 65 people, 70 people. I went with Rajiv Gandhi to China also as prime minister. I think the press delegation was about 70 people. I told him, don't take a media delegation, but take 6 journalists representing different genres. And I remember we took at least 2 editors, H.K. Dua of Hindustan Times, Dilip Padgaonkar of Times of India, K.K. Katyal of The Hindu, in a mix of ensuring maximum coverage. And the indispensable part of the 6 was Mr. Prem Prakash. Because ANI got the news across not only for a particular newspaper, but for the world at large. And the visit was a success from the media point of view, largely due to his presence and his reporting. These are personal memories. But I want to say a few words now about this book. I was still only yesterday morning abroad, but I had a chance to read it on the flight back and then again go through it today. This book is important for the understanding of a very important country which is a strategic neighbor. And no one has had a more ringside view, I believe, in our journalistic world than Prem Prakash ji of the evolution of what happened in Afghanistan from an insider's point of view. You see, a lot of journalism today is analysis from a great number of reports which the internet is literally brimming with. But his style of reporting was to be on the ground. While he was traveling there, his life was at stake. Bullets passed through his car. 2 bullets. At one time he was advised not to go to Ghazni, he still went. He reported from the ground. He met Najibullah. He interviewed him. He had connections among the changing regimes in Afghanistan and a bird's eye view not only to what was happening in Afghanistan, but he interviewed Robin Raphael, the Assistant Secretary of State in the US, about America's involvement in Afghanistan. And that is a very interesting part of this book. Her almost dismissive approach to his concerns of what American-backed mujahideens who later became the Taliban were doing in Afghanistan, especially to women. Her response was, no, Afghan women are used to be treated like that. Now this is a country which stands for gender equality. But in the game of real politics as it unfolds in real life, countries sometimes lose both conscience and principle. And Afghanistan is a classic case where people have fought their wars on somebody else's soil with the active involvement of one of our most hostile neighbors, which is Pakistan. And to see this triangle, America, Soviet Union, Pakistan, and the country at the center of that vortex, which is Afghanistan, and what it did to, you have to read this book. What I found particularly good about this book was that it focuses less on being an abstruse scholarly analysis and more a reader-friendly version of how the situation in different periods evolved in Afghanistan. And so to an ordinary reader, it makes what happens in Afghanistan right up to the current situation and what may happen in the future. A book which I would consider an essential read. So I would like to take this opportunity. I wanted to say a few words before the discussion because personally, I have the highest respect for Prem Prakash ji. And I thought that at the launch of his book, I would use this opportunity to pay a personal tribute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pavan. Thank you so very much, Pavan, for that. And warmest congratulations again. Read a short excerpt from the book, and then you can tell us how it all began. While studying ancient Indian history, we come across Huan Sang, the famous Chinese traveler, who visited India during the rule of King Harshavardhana in AD 630. In his writings, Sang mentions visiting Afghanistan. Babur, the founder of the Mughal dynasty, attacked and captured Afghanistan in AD 1504 and used it as his base for subsequent military moves towards India. Following his return from India, Babur stayed on in Kabul. He died there and was buried in Bagh-e-Babur, or the Garden of Babur. Later, the Emir of Afghanistan was forced to surrender some of his territories to Ranjit Singh after the latter's win in several battles that were fought between the Afghans and the Sikhs. After the decisive battle at Jamrud, Ranjit Singh annexed the Peshawar Valley and several Pashtun tribal areas, that exists today on the Pakistan side of the Durand Line. A famous painting from the time shows Ranjit Singh's victory march through Kabul. So this is where, in a sense, the story begins. But before that, you were telling me in our little tete-a-tete, a little conversation that we were having, that your career began when you were just out of college. You were about 19, 20 years old. And your then obsession about Afghanistan, your many trips, your visits. Tell us how it began, your interest first, and then we'll come to the book.
See, Afghanistan came much later. My father wanted me to continue my studies, but somehow I felt, what will I achieve by doing more studies? So I wanted to get into the profession straight away. And I had enjoyed writing. I had gone to Bombay at the launch of the National Union of Students of India. I came back and wrote a report which was very much admired by the principal and the teachers. That gave me my first writing. And I got on to it. Now, when I went to Europe, from there I went to England. That's what I was telling you. I found that the country was only known as land of snake charmers and elephants. Imagine a nation which had spent nearly 200 years with us, still calling us like that. I then decided at the back of my mind that swarg dekhne ke liye to khud marna padta hai. That one would have to set up one's own setup. It's only an Indian agency which can set the image right of the country. It was that made me steadily start working to build what is today ANI. And for that I must give credit to my son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandson, others who have helped to carry it forward. Because I could only build it, but then they have carried it forward. And as far as your question about this situation on Ranjit Singh, the fact is, Ranjit Singh was a very smart king. His empire had included all of Kashmir, Ladakh, all these areas. And he knew that any enemy from north, once he crossed Khyber, he could be stopped only in Panipat. So he decided that Khyber had to be taken over. And he ensured that the boundaries of his empire, that's what Punjab Empire was, were taken to the plains of Jalalabad. And for that, he defeated Ahmad Shah Durrani. You see, none of the Western writers will ever tell you that Afghans have been beaten also. Ranjit Singh did that. But Ranjit Singh was very smart. He didn't stay long. No doubt he cleared the treasury and restored Durrani to his position, but annexed Peshawar Valley, including Peshawar. Peshawar used to be the winter capital of Afghanistan. Then all the areas attached to it, Pashtun areas. I mean, even today, if you go to Pakistan, Pakistan's writ only runs on the road, not in Pashtun areas. They are very independent people. And that's how Ranjit Singh did. Yeah.
So from there we move, this book in a sense is almost like a history book. But apart from the players, apart from the different countries who then show interest in Afghanistan, come take over, and we come to modern times. Your last visit was in the year 2014. There are these very interesting bits where you speak about the other players who then come and play an important role. Present-day troubles for Afghanistan began with the fall of Ranjit Singh's empire. Political mismanagement, corruption, internal divisions, and Anglo-Sikh wars that followed the death of the Maharaja eventually led to the dissolution of the empire. Its end came when it was defeated by the British in the famous Battle of Guns near Multan in January 13, 1849. The British annexed Punjab and were now in control of North India till the borders of Afghanistan.
That's right. So, Afghans then wanted from the British the areas back. And that is what led to the two Anglo-Afghan wars, in which the British did get thorough beating, but ultimately what used to be the Ranjit Singh line came to be known as Durand line, and Peshawar continues to be part of this side, which is now in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan may be feeling very happy. I can tell you that with my personal experience about this. But the fact is, ever since this Taliban, and including Haqqani, Kabul is today ruled by a pro-Pakistan family, Haqqanis. But there have been two battles already on the border between Pakistan forces and the Taliban on the other side, who tell Pakistan, no, that area is ours. And the time is not far. I personally think that Afghans will lay a claim and tell Pakistan, give us back Peshawar. So wait and see that.
But if you could just tell us a little bit about your trips to Afghanistan. Tell us about the country, about its people.
You see, I have seen Afghanistan in very happy days. In very happy days. I didn't go there myself when Panditji visited it. My younger brother went there. And at that time, the palace women came out of Parda because they said, India is a brother country and the Prime Minister who's coming is our brother. So there can't be any Parda with the brother. And that's the first time that palace women came out of Parda and joined the banquet. Thereafter, it was a very happy country. I went there several times. Last visit was in 1975, before the troubles started. Afghan currency was better than Indian currency because rupee had started losing value already. By 75, it was in pretty bad shape. But Afghan currency was better than, Afghani was better than rupee's position. And Afghans are very clever businessmen. Not many people in the world know that Afghans were the first people to deal with money. The Central Bank of Afghanistan used to work its rate of exchange by getting the rate from the market. How they would manage to do it and keep check on what was happening in the other world markets. It's only smart Afghans could do it. But their unfortunate thing was that King Zahir Shah was ruling very well. And unfortunately, mullahs and others prevailed upon him to have his first cousin, Daud, as the Prime Minister. Daud somehow went towards Soviets. Now, prior to that, even Amanullah Khan had gone close to Soviets because British were not giving recognition to Amanullah Khan. They wanted to treat him as any other Indian prince. They wouldn't call him Your Majesty. So Amanullah Khan sent his envoy to Moscow. Lenin immediately recognized him, sent his people up there, and from then on they became pretty close. But Soviets were smart, not interfering in their internal affairs. Now, I was telling you about Daud. 1973, Zahir Shah had gone for medical treatment in Italy when Daud overthrew him. That's where the troubles for Afghanistan begin. Now he overthrew him. He went still closer to Soviets. Something like several thousand students. Some people have said 5,000. Some people say 10,000. I don't think those numbers are correct. But several thousand students were going to Soviet Union. Now, when these youngsters from very poor country like Afghanistan would land there, it was like Jannat for them. So they would come back as hardened communists. Then the Afghan army was being trained by Soviets. An Afghan army, as I saw it, virtually, it was very powerful, was the adjunct of Soviet army. Now, Daud, now this is where the Americans now come into the picture. Afghanistan was part of non-aligned movement. So was Shah of Iran. They used Shah of Iran to impress upon Daud to hold a meeting of the non-aligned foreign ministers meeting in Kabul in April of 1978. This was something which Soviet Union did not like. They didn't want that because they had already seen what Marshal Tito had done of Yugoslavia. So they didn't want that. And as the day arrived nearly, Daud was overthrown by Afghan army and the Communist Party of Afghanistan. The communist government then took over. Taraqi was the first. I met him. I was there almost immediately. My dear friend S.K. Singh was the ambassador there, and he sent me a card to meet me at the airport. And I went straight to the president's palace where all his family had been murdered. But Afghans had no regret because Afghans were unhappy that he had overthrown the king. So Taraqi, hardcore communist, started exactly like what Mao did, what others do. A lot of Afghans were killed, tried to push so-called reforms. He was succeeded by Hafizul Amin, who was equally bad. By that time, Soviets were realizing that this whole thing was getting out of hands. So they brought in Babrak Karmal, asking him to make a broad-based government. Again, I was always there. And when Babrak Karmal came in, first thing he did was to invite the Soviet army to Afghanistan, which was not to the liking of either Afghans, and that gave a plea to Americans, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia now to intervene. And this is where the tragedy of Afghanistan begins. Even though the three helping to create problems were not able to really beat the Soviet army. Soviet army was spreading itself all over. I saw that. I was even arrested by the, I must bring you to that. I was covering the story outside, and the Soviets were digging trenches and so on. Suddenly my soundman tells me, Premji, you have taken nice shots, but I think you are missing some close-ups. That was my beginning of my problem. I went back. Obviously, the Soviet troops noticed it, And from a distance, I could see, sometimes I remember seeing those movies, there was a man standing in the middle, but I quickly put my film elsewhere, and the car was stopped. So I was arrested by myself and the other team. 4 of us were arrested by the Soviets, army taken over. They made us stand on the ice. Luckily, the man with me, he was from Kashmir, and he said, Premji, don't stand, just keep moving. They want our feet to get snow bite or what, and don't do that. So by that time, about a couple of hours or 2.5 hours, some 4 or 5 black limousines drove in. And each one of us on the back seat, the man on the left, man on the right, man in front, we were driven to the office of Afghan National Security or Intelligence. Najibullah was the vice chairman of that organization. That's when I first met him. And he said, it changed Urdu, कि आप हमारे दोस्तों का ये क्या कर रहे हैं, आप तो हिंदुस्तान से हमारे भाई हैं. तो I said, but मैं तो कुछ भी नहीं कर रहा, आप अपने दोस्तों को कहिए कि आगे से हट जाएं, मैं जहाँ कैमरा लगाता हूँ वो सामने आ जाते हैं. He said, he tells me, I don't want to see you again here. I said, sir, I don't want to come back here again. So like that, it was a nice chat. He would then drop into the Intercontinental Love and that, and became good friends. But this war then continued, and so when America, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia couldn't make a headway, first slogan was Islam in danger. That also didn't work for a while. Then came Mujahideen. And I'll tell you one thing about certain Afghans. वो पैसे के पीर हैं. The other side would buy off the Mujahideen. And the war then continued, but the damage was being caused to the country. And the fact is that because of all that, by 1986, the things were very bad. Soviet Union itself was now receiving it was getting heavy casualties, a lot of money being spent. Gorbachev by that time took over in Soviet Union. He started bringing about reforms. I have always felt, I don't know what Pavanji thinks, somehow I always felt that he was not a true Soviet or Russian, because within 2 years, Soviet Union virtually broke up. 20 republics had broken away. And then there was a coup against Gorbachev, and Yeltsin took over. But prior to that, I forgot to tell you, that when Gorbachev took over, Najibullah was ruling the country, and he was ruling the country. He had given up the communism. He had changed the name of the party. He was trying to make himself fully acceptable, and he had become acceptable. And he was ready for the withdrawal of Soviet troops. Gorbachev wanted that. So Gorbachev was surprised when he talked to Najibullah, whom I knew by very, very friendly by now. And we were also helping Najibullah, but unfortunately, I hope Pavanji doesn't differ with me, we are a Bania government. We do help, but sometimes we hold back. There was a moment, I think I mentioned in the book, Najib wanted me to convey a message to the ambassador. a certain payment had to be made to Dostum. Dostum was a warlord. And these warlords are money. That's all. And he had to make certain payment, and he asked me if I'll convey that. I said, I'll convey that. Nambiar was our ambassador in... I conveyed to Nambiar, and he said, Premji, I think we are bottomless. Well, I said, sir, either we are involved or we are not involved. The simple fact is, he is very afraid. And if he has asked me to convey, no, he has already told me also, but now you tell me, I'll convey it again to Delhi. Money was not delivered to Dostum. Because money was not delivered to Dostum, Dostum withdrew from the Pakistan border. That is when Taliban entered. I was there again at that time. They came outside. I had a team of 8 journalists, which included a couple of young ladies. And Soumya, one of them, comes back one day with a very nice report. I saw that, and I said, Soumya, you are very lucky. She said, how, sir? I said, this is not Taliban. This is Pakistan Army. She said, how? I said, look at their march. Taliban won't march like that. But these people withdrew as fast as they came, went back into the outside Kabul. And then we know thereafter, as Najibullah was unable to carry on much further, Ahmad Shah Massoud from north, he was equally a very great leader and a fighter. He walked into Kabul and took control of Kabul, but not of the presidency. We were able to bring out Najibullah's family, but somehow we failed to bring out Najibullah. So Najibullah, when coming back from the airport, went straight to the UN compound. Indian envoy was called at night by the UN representative who wanted Najibullah to go to the Indian mission. And I'm glad that the Indian envoy didn't agree. Najibullah also didn't want to go to the Indian mission because these Taliban and company would have attacked the Indian mission after that. So that story from there takes a turn, coming back to Robin Raffel. By now the oil interests also moving. This oil business is everywhere. There was a company named Bridas who were already doing some oil work in Turkmenistan. Unicol came into the picture. All of them not realizing that Afghans had already sealed the gas and oil wells, and they wanted to exploit these. Robin Raffel had spoken to Benazir Bhutto about this. Bridas had signed an agreement with Rabbani in Kabul. And to cut the long story short, I was on a visit to Washington when one of the senators told me, Prem Prakash, you know, Karzai is also a Unicol employee. I said, wow. And Robin Raffel too was involved in it. And she was Clinton's Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs. So that way Afghanistan has been a very unfortunate land which has become victim of all these international machinations. Any further?
What exactly, I mean, who were the people supplying you with information? Just I mean, just to get an idea of where you were getting information, all the political information from.
You see?
One was that. And on the other hand, a bit of your life. You're in the midst of, you're in the middle of a conflict zone.
Yes.
What is your life like? And you keep going back again and again.
You see,
is your family worried? Is your wife saying, don't go back?
Well, they were worried, they were concerned. But then I have to do a profession, I have to carry on. This is, I just mentioned to you about East Pakistan, when I covered that. So, but coming here, I think I'm the most widely traveled person in Afghanistan. Because what I would do there, like the Afghans, I would go to the airport and sit there like this, among the Afghans. There were no flights known which flight will go where. So whichever flight went anywhere, I also boarded it. Because I knew that I'll come back anyway. So I went to Herat. From Herat, to come into the city, one had to come in an armored car. Because all the road from airport to the city was controlled by the others. So no taxi could come. The city of Herat was in a pretty bad shape. And similarly, I was near Bazar-e-Sharif and close to Balkh. One had heard so much about Balkh, Bukhara in childhood. So I said, I must go to Balkh.
You've written about it.
Yeah. So I was being warned that don't go to Balkh.
Yes.
It's already in the hands of Taliban. I said, no, I'll go to Balkh. So we, three of us, myself, my cameraman and the sound man, we went to Balkh. There's a guy on the wall, top. It's a walled city. He shouted, what are you going there? So our interpreter told them that we were Indians, Hindustan se hain. And he said, okay, agar aap ja rahe ho, to tell them that you are from Hindustan. Because if you were from Hindustan, you are okay. But not with Taliban though. Anyhow, it was a very deserted city. There was only a tea shop that was open. There were a few army people. But I was wondering, where the hell is the Afghan army? So that's my memory of Balkh. And yes, and this is how I traveled all over. You know.
You briefly mentioned, this is a very beautiful little excerpt. Thus, it is no coincidence that Herat, being a historical city, has a number of ancient monuments, including the great mosque or the Jami Masjid. It was built by Sultan Ghiyath-al-Din Muhammad bin San or Muhammad Ghori. It was from here that Muhammad Ghori attacked India and defeated Prithviraj Chauhan in the Second Battle of Tarain in Haryana in 1192. The first battle was won by Prithviraj Chauhan in 1191. Herat was a lively city under Zahir Shah when prosperity was all around. The Herat I saw during my visit was in shambles. It was obvious to me that street fights had taken place there between the Mujahideen fighters and the Afghan forces. The hotel I was staying in was badly damaged and did not have its entire staff. I was informed by the receptionist owner that many staff members had long gone back to their villages and then fled with their families to Pakistan to escape the war. So here are glimpses of life as you saw it.
As I saw it, yeah, that's right. This is the way it was. I mean, this is, it was very unfortunate. This is the way it, and I saw it all over. I saw it all over. I was very lucky to go to the north also, and to be able to have met Masood.
Masood plays an important role.
I wanted to ask a question.
Hanji.
Actually, since time is short, I am butting in with your permission. But it was such a captivating discussion that I didn't. I have 3-4 questions to ask. What do you think would have happened if Masood, who was a liberal leader, within the northern provinces, he had even passed a bill for equal rights for women, education, etc. He was somebody India backed also. What do you think would have happened in Afghanistan if he had not been assassinated in the manner in which he did?
Actually, we were talking about
Yes, Pavanji, he was a great man. The women's rights bill that you say, he asked women of Panjshir to prepare it, and he passed it. Panjshir was a different kind of place. It had emeralds and it had its own resources, which is able to use. And he had control over the Salang tunnel. So he would occasionally block it and then make arrangement with the Soviets. Money, and which meant that he could look after his people. Now, if he had not been assassinated, he was on his way towards Kabul. And I have mentioned in the book, I can't understand why on earth, first of all, these two so-called journalists who claimed themselves to be journalists from Belgium turned up there, and there was no way for them to find out what exactly who they are and so on.
Well, security lapse.
It's very serious security lapse. And there was a guy named Sayyaf, Wahhabi, Saudi Arabian, who made it possible for them to arrive there in Panjshir. Now, Masood was not in Panjshir. I don't know why his people became so innocent that when these guys said, no, we are going away, we can't wait for him, they took him there. They took these two guys there. Now, we had a hospital, Indians had a hospital there. We were, thank God that we were helping him as much as we could. And, but then he was badly injured. By the time the helicopter, we had provided the helicopters, by the time the helicopter took him to the hospital, he was dead. So that has been the big, big tragedy, that A, the killing of Najibullah, B, the assassination of Masood.
Who had warned you about who had known about 9/11?
Who had, you see, in the sense that he went to Europe, France. France has a couple of streets named after him in Paris, in his memory. And he had warned Europeans that there's going to be a major attack on the US. There's going to be a major attack on the US. On 9th of September, Masood is killed. On 11th of September, you know what happened in America. That attack on America, in my view, was bigger than what happened at Pearl Harbor. At Pearl Harbor, 2,400 people were killed. In attack on 9/11 attack, that they call, 2 days after Masood's killing, 6,000 are recognized deaths, but maybe more. Over 24,000 were injured, and over 100,000 suffered the smoke and dust problems. Not only that, never in history has Pentagon been attacked. Pentagon was attacked and Deputy Chief of the US Army was killed. It is the fourth plane, 2 planes attacked which could have, by that time the passengers on the plane came to know what was going on. It was those passengers who then tried to take control of the aircraft along with whatever crew was left, because they had killed the captain on the flight and taken charge of the plane. So the plane crashed. Otherwise, I have a feeling that that plane could have either crashed on White House or on the Capitol. So this was the biggest attack on the US itself, which Osama bin Laden was able to bring about. And how much more time it had taken, and Pakistan has always played duplicity game. And I can't believe, I mean, Americans call themselves with great intelligence, this, that, and the rest. Why couldn't they find out that these guys are behaving like this? You can also tell me why they couldn't find out. Even though Bush told Musharraf that I will bomb Pakistan out of existence, he said, I'll give you full help. I was once having a dinner at a friend's house in London, where Musharraf was present. I had a nice chat with him. When I was coming back, the taxi guy in Punjabi made a very nice comment. He said, these guys made money first by hiding him, Osama bin Laden. Then they made money by getting him killed. So that's about Pakistan.
A second question I wanted to ask you, because as we move to the future, of course, Masood was Tajik, and Afghanistan being such an intricate tapestry of tribal loyalties, there was always the question of a Tajik versus the Pakhtun population. But that apart, do you think now the Taliban rule in Afghanistan is popular?
It's not popular. That much I can tell you. It is not popular. Afghans are a very large-hearted people. They love their drink also. They may say, we don't drink. Salwar ke niche rakhte hain bottle.
Much like Pakistan. But the point I was trying to make is, the Taliban is unpopular. We are seeing the worst form of medieval primitivism in the nature of the government they are running, especially where women are concerned. America and the Russians, earlier the Soviet Union, have learned their lessons, will keep out. How does Afghanistan resolve its problem?
Very difficult at the moment. But never can tell. You see, how does it? The answer was given by Masood himself to an ANI correspondent.
Yeah, I remember.
The last page, just read it out.
Yeah. During an interview by ANI in 1992, Masood was asked when he thought peace would arrive in Afghanistan. He replied saying, when Pakistan and the others who are supporting them stop meddling in Afghanistan, the war will end. However, that remains a distant dream.
That's what it is.
In the absence of this, the tragedy of Afghanistan continues. And also, may I compliment you on your cover, because this image is so evocative of the Bamiyan.
See what these idiots did. Mullah Omar ordered the blowing up of
The Bamiyan.
Bamiyan Buddhas. These were the greatest tourist attractions. From world over, the tourists would come there. They blew that up. They destroyed a Salif. There are lovely places there. And the country is in very bad shape at the moment. I agree with you, absolutely. But again, I dare say, India will have a big role to play in the long run.
That was going to be my final question.
India will have a big role to play.
India have a role because Pakistan, I don't think, is loved by Afghans.
No, absolutely.
The Americans and the manner in which they left Afghanistan to their fate in the hands of the savage Talibani forces is not a popular country either. Soviet Union doesn't exist, Russia is in no position to be involved.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, I think the great game in Afghanistan, which is of great strategic importance to us, will be that of China and Pakistan on one side, and India on the other, backed by hopefully saner forces in the West.
There are people in Afghanistan itself who would be able to do that, and they may be lying low at the moment, but I don't think it can be. You see, the whole thing is Zalmi Khalizad, who conducted negotiations on behalf of Americans with Taliban. I personally believe he was pro-Taliban. I personally strongly believe in Geneva. I personally believe he was with them. And American intelligence, somewhere I find, I don't know, Pavan, why they are not able to see what's going on. The way he negotiated the withdrawal of American troops, is this the way to Soviet Union withdrew the troops, taking full 9 months, and with great respect, dignity, proper, so much so that after all the troops were gone, the commander-in-chief of the Soviet troops in Afghanistan himself single-handedly marched over the bridge across Amur River. That's the way to do it. Look at the way they had to run away. Look at the way they, about 13 American soldiers were killed. All things happened. They left 2,000 Americans in Kabul. That's not the way. He didn't. Why did they not properly negotiate the withdrawal of? Whether Biden is to be held responsible for that, Obama is to be held responsible for that, but the negotiator was Zalmi Khalizad.
One question you asked me and answered that about this disintegration of the Soviet Union and the role of Gorbachev. I have been posted in Moscow. I was Under Secretary of the Soviet desk in the Foreign Office. And I was in Moscow just when Yeltsin took over.
Oh.
And my own feeling is, and this, by the way, has lessons for some other countries as well. When long-established totalitarian governments tinker with reform, the entire system careens out of control.
Yes.
So a little bit of perestroika and a little bit of glasnost, well-intentioned on the part of Gorbachev perhaps, was something the brittle Soviet system of totalitarian rule could not adjust to. And it went out of control. And the same Soviet Union, because I was present in the talks, once a year before Mrs. Gandhi died, on her visit to Moscow, she was having talks in the Kremlin with a rather old and ailing President Brezhnev.
Brezhnev, yes.
And you must have been there as well.
Yes.
I was in the meeting, and as you know, in these meetings you discuss your internal state, international affairs. Mrs. Gandhi was giving a briefing in passing about the state of insurgency in Punjab. Brezhnev had dozed off. And Gromyko, his foreign minister, nudged him awake, and our interpreter also takes down notes of what they speak in Russian. Something I can share with you. So Brezhnev said to Gromyko, "What is she talking about? I cannot understand a word of what she's saying." At which Gromyko, as quickly as possible, explained to him state of Punjab, Khalistan issue, etc. Mrs. Gandhi was still talking, and contrary to normal diplomatic protocol,
President Brezhnev, with a sweeping gesture of his hand, intervened and said, "Your Excellency, how can you allow such things to happen in your country? Look at the Soviet Union. Since 1917, we have never had these incidents happen." Some years later, the Soviet Union was some 17 republics or 13 republics. And Punjab is still part of India and a democracy with one of the largest electoral turnouts in the last election.
That's right.
So that is the alchemy of democracy. And it is on this count that I worry about China as well. The time may not have come. But when totalitarian regimes in their own self-interest begin to tinker with reform, they are not equipped to deal with its consequences. And all the pent-up, explosive emotionalism lying below the surface finds like a pressure cooker burst.
It will happen. It will happen in China because, again, apart from tours with the prime ministers and presidents, I have been lucky to travel on my own in China.
Ordinary people.
Far and wide. And there is poverty. There is poverty. There is
And
poverty.
Obviously democratic discontent.
Yes. Go ahead.
So thank you very much, Premji, Pawan. On another note, just to end, this has been a fascinating book and all of you must, of course, read it. Because our association with the Afghani, Kabuliwala, goes back many years to Tagore's Kabuliwala. Hopefully things will change and will look up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Good evening, sir. Please tell us what's the more about the opium trade of Afghanistan, which is a very important part of Afghanistan. Opium.
Yeah, opium was largely used by Taliban.
So my question is the opium trade in Afghanistan, which plays a very important role right from the beginning. This is what my question was.
No, it has not played important role right from the beginning, because in the happy days, it wasn't there. In happy days, I've seen when I traveled there, it wasn't opium. It was fruits and other things. Opium appeared ISI. ISI is perhaps the biggest trader in opium in the world. So it's much later.
Who do you talk to in Taliban? Who do you talk to? And what do you talk about? You see, we are involved, as Prem Prakash ji knows, in several infrastructure projects in Afghanistan,
Which are good.
including building their new parliament, roads, hospitals, and so on and so forth. But right now, the kind of regime that is in Taliban, that is in power in Afghanistan, I think that to have any kind of sensible dialogue with them is a near impossibility. But I can only say, and since Jaishankar and I were colleagues, 1 year junior to me, I can only say that we must be keeping a very close watch. And in doing so, we must be keeping a very close watch on what is happening within Pakistan. An imploding Pakistan and the traditional rivalry between Pakistan and now the currently nascent Taliban in Afghanistan. These are factors that we must be watching.
Absolutely.
This is the last question, please.
So when we talk about the opium,
Yes, the mic.
Thank you. When we talk about the opium trade and its consequences in the region, we think in terms of that area being the supply area with its spillover effect into even states like the Indian Punjab, where drug addiction is hugely rampant, in part fueled by these things across the border. But do you see a scenario where these guys could implode under their own weight of what I call narco-terrorism? Is there a possibility that it can just sort of go haywire and cloud their judgment, and maybe we have, say, a 9/11 like situation?
You see, in Punjab, as some of us know, some of the politicians are involved. So it's apart from that, ISI is involved in it. And it could, I don't know.
In my view, if the ISI is involved in the increasing harvesting of opium in Afghanistan, partly to finance the Frankenstein monster they have created, which is Taliban, the ISI must be also meddling in Pakistan by the supply of drugs. Where, if Prem Prakash ji is right, it's a very lucrative business. So politics and politicians are attracted towards it.
So thank you, Prem Prakash ji, for giving us such an interesting insight and outlook on India and Afghanistan. It was a delightful conversation. I mean, there were some incidents which were giving us goosebumps. Thank you, Pavan Verma ji, for sharing your thoughts, and Ina Puri ji for navigating the session so beautifully. The evening, we have got some great perspectives on the book, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to pick it up to read. A special word of appreciation to our SR's family. Last but not the least, thank you to our wonderful audience. Your constant support encourages us to be more and do more. Thank you and good night. Do feel free to pick up today's special book at a special discounted rate outside. Yeah, what is beautiful.
Sir? No, we must get together soon.
जल्दी बोलो नहीं सर लंबा नहीं है एक दो मैं गिरा लूँ उसके बाद सर एक क्वेश्चन सर लगाओ मैं सर एक छोटा सा सवाल है सर